This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast
with Tony Bruschi.
That it is. We're talking with Anne Bremner. She's one of the nation's most recognized legal analysts. We're talking about the Daybells. I want to talk about Chad Daybell a little bit in his upcoming trial. But I want to talk specifically about the information that's coming out in Lori's trial right now and how that could end up affecting his trial coming up. There seems to be a lot within the trial of Lori that's being dismissed as like, well, you know, Chad did that, and maybe Lori was along for the ride, or kind of knew about it, or didn't know about it, or was delusional. There's a lot of angles they're trying to take, but almost stating some of these things just as fact. It's like, this is what Chad did. But Chad hasn't been found guilty of anything yet, innocent until proven guilty. So when they're moving some of these pieces into those places of fact, is that going to be brought up when the time comes for him to stand trial, or all these independent pieces that were moved around in Lori's trial going to stay in Lori's bucket, and Chad's trial's going to be his own bucket of facts that come to light?
Well, I mean, his trial's going to be independent, and I don't even know if we have the same judge. So yeah. Usually you have rulings that are binding if it's, you know, the same judge, same set of facts, et cetera, same defendant. But that having been said, I mean, something like going on Amazon on your dead husband's account and getting matching wedding rings and a linen shirt for him and your wedding dress, you know, before Tammy dies.
Yeah.
Things like that are pretty damning.
Without a doubt. I'm interested to see how much this is going to affect when he actually does go to trial, by the terms of how this all ends up playing out.
I think he's got a problem. I think he's got a problem going second. You know, I mean, if I were defending Lori, I'd throw him under the bus.
Yeah.
But I don't think she's willing to do that. But we're seeing some throwing anyway. You know, just based on the evidence, that the evidence points at him.
Where the evidence is pointing at him directly right now, could you see at some point where his defense watching this trial going, okay, would it be wise for them to speak up and say, Chad, maybe you should go take the stand in this trial, or we should request that you want to make a statement and actually testify against Lori?
Yes. I mean, and you know, he might do it. I mean, that guy's, you know, pretty diabolical, and I think that to save himself, you know, he's still got the death penalty on the table. Mm-hmm. You know, prosecutors say they don't like to bargain on the death penalty, but they do. They did it in the Green River Killer case out here in Seattle, where Ridgway killed 48 people, and they took death off the table to try and find more victims. You know, trying to find all the victims' bodies. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he came in and did that. Would you?
No, not at all at this point. I'm just wondering, logistically, how would that happen at this point if he were to come in? He's not on the witness list at all right now, but how would he end up making an appearance if so, that they came to the prosecution and said, hey, we want to help you. How can we do that with what Chad wants to say?
Well, you know, there's going to be a lot of protests, you know, from the defense team for Lori, and, you know, in terms of having to deal with this testimony this late in the day. So it's going to be up to and I don't know in Idaho what kind of, you know, rules they would have on discovery and something like this, and kind of late breaking bombshell witness. You know, a lot of judges would say, no, you know, it's just too late.
Yeah.
It's too much prejudice. Or you get a continuance, but you can't really bifurcate the trial. They're already in it.
Sure.
So it'd be interesting to see. Idaho's a very conservative state. You know, it's what happens over there is not what happens out here in Seattle.
Sure.
So it's hard to say what a judge would do. This is a judge that shut down the media. This is a judge that's moved everything along. This is a judge that threw out the death penalty based on late disclosures by the prosecutor. Mm-hmm. I mean, you never hear that. I mean, that's pretty decisive. So I'd be interested to see what this judge does if that comes to pass.
With Lori having an issue the other day of not wanting to go back into her actual trial, but then the sidebar took place. They went into the hall. They talked her back in, almost like a child at school, not wanting to go back into class.
Right.
But they got her back in, and I thought some of the interesting language that Judge Stephen Boyce used including the terminology bound and gagged, not necessarily threatening her with it, but did cite either it was case law or some sort of rule of which could apply if the defendant does not willingly go into court on their own. With that sort of breakdown, so I'm curious on your opinion. Are we seeing a mental breakdown of Lori in this case, or is this just more of her using her manipulation tactics in any way, shape, or form? And we've really kind of got down here to almost childlike behavior of kicking and screaming.
Oh, yeah. She is such a manipulator. I mean, the coquettishness in court, the doing her hair, like having that scene as if she's traumatized, by this evidence. And it's pretty gruesome evidence about how the bodies were found,
Sure.
with JJ with the duct tape around his head and his mouth. And I mean, and Tylee like in a bucket,
Yeah.
I mean, her remains. But so I just thought that was complete manipulation and the, stomping of her feet and everything else and theatrics.
Is the concern I know that everyone has, especially the judge, because he wants to get through this thing, is that it's going to bring up something on appeals with her antics. I mean, is that the strategy that Lori is employing independently at this point of her counsel even? She kind of sees the writing on the wall. This isn't going good. So if she does enough theatrics, maybe she'll break something or something won't be done quite correctly that it will give her a chance at an appeal. Or I don't even know what the MO is at this point with what she's doing.
Yeah, I'm not sure if she's that sophisticated. I think she's a complete narcissist. And so is Chad. And I think that she, that was all about her. And she just decided to make a scene. Maybe she felt bad and she didn't want to hear that evidence. I mean, maybe some part of her, feels bad about what happened to her kids, I mean, on some level. But I think she's just all about her, and she wanted what she wanted, and so she was not going to come back in.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing. We can look at it from the prism of healthy people and go, yeah, of course, you see and hear these stories of your children, literally dismembered in buckets, and that would be traumatizing. That'd be horrible. You wouldn't want to hear it. But if you were already kind of aware of what was going on, or at least played a part in it, it's not necessarily shocking. Are her reactions more so not to the details of the goriness of all this, but more so it doesn't play along with the narrative in which she lives her life, in which she probably believes she's not doing anything wrong? It's like throwing water on the Wicked Witch, essentially. Like, I'm melting. It's the kryptonite that's hitting her, and not being able to handle you are literally chained to a desk right now, and you're going to have to hear the facts.
Yeah, and like I saw an article in the Daily Mail where she'd been some beauty queen before, and she also was on The Price Right. And you kind of think, is this somebody that always wants fame and attention? And so she can't stand to see herself viewed in a negative light. And that's exactly what the testimony was going to indicate. I'm sure the jurors would be looking at her, while the evidence comes out. I don't know if they were or not, but I think some of them cried, didn't they? When they heard that evidence. And I mean, it's horrible crimes.
I'm going to ask you this in closing, as I've been asking everyone, but now we're further into this and we've already seen her crack a little bit once. Do you think this trial is going to make it to an end with a verdict, or is this thing going to end up in some sort of chaotic end with it being a mistrial and her not being able to stand due to competency issues?
I always thought the competency issue dealt with her extreme beliefs. Like, it's just, I mean, and that makes sense. I mean, her beliefs and Chad's beliefs were so extreme that you'd have to say you must be mentally ill to believe those things, right?
Yeah.
But she passed that, she passed that phase. So, and that's a really low standard, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
So I think it'll go to a verdict. I think that it's going to be a very orderly trial, despite her best efforts. And, I think that the evidence is there, especially with the way it's been charged, with all those counts of conspiracy. That was super smart, to charge that way in terms of asking a jury to find her guilty. So My prediction is no chaos and a swift verdicts.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers
The
Podcast
Hidden Killers Podcast.
with Tony Bruschi.
Anne Bremner, one of the nation's most recognized legal analysts. Thank you so much for your insight as we dissect the future of the Daybell trials. Chad Daybell's coming up and what may end up happening here with Lori. If you like the podcast, press subscribe wherever you download podcasts so you don't miss any breaking updates or discussions of the cases we're following for you. You can even get an ad-free experience when you sign up through Apple Podcasts right now. Go check that out. I'm Tony Bruschi. Stay with us.